Hey, it's me, Steve. It is September 15, 2017. Time is 16:45, and it is Geo-Rant time. And I actually am going to talk about the hypothesis that hydrothermal vents in the ocean floor were the cradle where life first appeared, because I've been talking to, YouTube commenting back and forth with some people on this, and I don't think it happened. It is still a hypothesis. It's not a theory. And there are several reasons why it likely did not happen. I mean, yeah, it seems like a nifty, cool idea, but there's so many problems with it. I mean, from a biological standpoint, I guess there really aren't many problems with it, but from a geologic standpoint, it's riddled with problems. The biggest one being that, the oldest fossils on Earth that have been confirmed are about 3.5 billion years old, and I believe there's some that are still being resolved, whether they're fossils or not, that could extend to 3.8 or even 4.1 billion years. But it doesn't really matter, because there's one thing that we have going on Earth now that we did not have going on then, and that's this little thing called plate tectonics, which I've addressed before. We aren't even sure hydrothermal vents were a thing prior to fully blown, to the appearance of modern plate tectonics. So, obviously we had ocean crust, but it's not here anymore. It's gone. So, even if life did start at hydrothermal vents, it'll never really become a theory, because that ocean crust is gone. You don't have any direct evidence really for it. Anyway, so if plate tectonics wasn't even in operation, that's a huge problem. Because you may have just had huge, magmatic rifts on the ocean floor or something like that, some plumes or something, where it just would have been too hot for anything to actually, become stable. But there's other problems with it as well. The fact that all life presently known along hydrothermal vents has modern surface analogs closely related to superficial things living today. They're not really unique. They don't have any really primitive features. Yeah, they look weird, but looking weird doesn't mean you're not related to something just because you don't look exactly like it. They pulled DNA from these things, and like I said, they have surface analogs. Another major problem with this is, even if it did start on the ocean floor life, how do you get from this warm, chemically rich environment, say life did form on the ocean floor, around magmatic plumes or whatever, how do you get that, what we would consider extremophiles, get it to go up near the surface across a cold, dark ocean where there's no sunlight, there's no source of food, because remember, there's only microorganisms at this time, and then start leaving these huge algae deposits and stromatolites that we see in tidal flat environments across the planet in the Precambrian. That doesn't make a lot of that's a hard logical stretch. You can't really. It'd be a lot easier for something to go down. To go down to hydrothermal vents and adapt to that food source than it would be to adapt there and come up. Because you got to remember too, in the Precambrian, there's no ozone. Okay, there's no oxygen, and we have a lot of evidence for microfossils in shallow tidal flats, stromatolites. They're everywhere, and agile mats. We have these things. Does that mean life formed in tidal environments? No. There's a lot more evidence for that than there is hydrothermal vents. But there's another possibility where life might have formed too, and that's in hot springs near tidal flats or near active volcanoes, because hot springs produced by active volcanoes, because that would have made a similar chemical concoction. But since you're near the surface, you also have access to things like sunlight to aid in chemical reactions. And plus in shallow water you have a lot more temperature variations between day and night, so you can get certain chemicals that'll form during the warm day in the warm sea, but at night, not as much, or you get different chemicals. So life would have been able to, in the shallow sea, it would have already have been exposed to that day-night cycle plus more climatic change, it would have been exposed. It would have been easier for it to go down to the ocean floor to adapt to that than to come up from the ocean floor in a stable, warm environment and all of a sudden be whacked with all these environmental factors it didn't have to deal with before. But anyway, that's just my rant on the hydrothermal vent origin of abiogenesis, origin of life hypothesis, and why I think it's a load of crap. And I hope you learned something.